And then as soon as that's set up, I will share my screen. Okay. I think we're there.
Awesome.
Can you see that okay? Do you see that slide deck there?
I surely do.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I am going to put it in present mode, and many of these reminders that are on this slide apply to a larger group. And you may have seen these before. Let me ask you, Bev, if you have participated in workshops with the ICN before.
I have not, but I have heard so many wonderful things. So I was really excited that this opened up as wide as it did this year.
Oh, we are delighted, and I'm thank you for the affirmations. We love the work that we do, and I will just run through the slides then as I would for a whole group, so that just to kind of model how you could use these resources for your groups that you facilitate. Does that sound like a reasonable way to proceed?
That sounds great.
Okay, fantastic. And then in the breakout sessions, we'll just skip the breakout room and you and I can have a delightful conversation. So we provide these reminders at the beginning of our workshop. And I should just pause and introduce myself. You can see my name is Rose Hendricks, and I live in Driggs, Idaho, and I am one of the Region 6 coaches. So I serve Eastern Idaho. So a couple of reminders for this session. You'll want to have your microphone on mute when not speaking. Although Bev, I would say with the two of us, let's forget that. We can just have a conversation. I know your camera isn't working, so no worries about turning your camera on. That's just a reminder we generally invite people into. If possible, you want to have your first and last name as your screen name, and then you'll want that workbook that I shared in the chat or another place to create if you like to work with pen and paper. Although I'm guessing because of your line of work, you're probably very comfortable working digitally. And then, as always, we invite participants to bring an open mind and heart to our thinking and learning together. I also want to invite you into some community agreements. And so these are agreements that we feel create a safe learning space for everyone in the learning community. And the norms are be fully present, so resist the temptation to multitask or be efficient, engage in dialogue. So that just includes sharing your voice and inviting others' voices, along with participation and deep listening. And then mindset, believe deeply in the potential of others to change and grow, and believe just as deeply in your potential to change and grow. So, our learning goals for this session are these. Educators will consider what the research says about resilience and why it's so critical. And educators will participate in several resilience building strategies and consider how to help their students build resilience as well. But I would change that for you as an administrator. Um, helping your colleagues build resilience, it sounds like, is what you're really focused on. Hello, Christine. Welcome. Great to have you here. Christine, I am going to go ahead and drop into the chat once again, because I don't think you'll see the old chat, the workshop materials that we're working with in this session. And we have a very intimate group today. So I am really excited to connect with both of you and for you to connect with each other. So, oh, there you are. Hi. I feel like I already know you. Bev, Christine, and I were in the last session together. And
Nice. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Christine, Bev was having some camera issues, but her sound is fine, so she can hear you. And Bev, you can see us, right?
I sure can. Yeah, I don't know. Zoom is the only platform I've been having camera issues with all school year. It's pretty frustrating.
Oh my gosh, I would imagine. I'm so sorry. This shows your resilience that you're here today in spite of the technology issues. So I want to invite you into a question that I think really challenges our thinking about this year, and it's around things to keep. So I want to ask you to do some thinking about something that was brought on by the change in this last year that has been positive, something you want to keep even if things go back to normal. And so that can be from your personal and or professional life. And we'll just take a couple of minutes to share, to think first and write and share out. And I will just go ahead and set a timer. About 30 seconds left. You want to bring your thinking and writing to a close, and then we'll just have a little chance to share out. All right. I'm so curious to hear and learn a little bit more about you through these celebrations. If you want to unmute and just share your thinking on this prompt, I'd love to hear.
Okay, so I'm always nervous that I'm going to interrupt somebody, so I'm just going to throw that out there. So I don't know, Christine, do you want to share first? Would you like me to share?
Go ahead.
Okay, so two things. I would say that the change that I really want to keep personally is balance at home. I have a 7th grader and a 3rd grader, and switching out of brick and mortar and going into virtual teaching full time really helped bring some very important balance that my home has not had for quite some time. So that has been amazing. And professionally, I have found students are not very comfortable initially when teachers start calling them to help them with work. It can be kind of scary for students, but I have found that has been more powerful now than I ever could have thought it could be. And I've been an educator for 18 years. So that is one thing that I'm going to keep doing, is make that effort more with calling, because it's proven to be quite powerful.
Those are huge celebrations, Bev. And I love how I think they kind of reveal our fundamental need for connection. I see that theme like for, in the first celebration, that connection with family, with your children, and probably with yourself too, that balance. And then connection with students via phone calls, and how I think sometimes these technologies that we're using, like the phone, have more possibility for connection than we might at first give them credit for. So I love that you experienced that. Thank you for sharing. And Christine, how about for you? What did you write and think about?
So something that was brought to my attention that has changed in the last year for me is my organizational skills. I've always been somewhat of a rebel when it comes to having to organize things or have a system. I kind of like to fly by the seat of my pants. But I found that actually writing down my schedule and writing down the things that I need to be doing at certain times of the day has helped me tremendously, kept me motivated, and keeps my projects going more productively. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep writing or making my scheduling my workday for me, my workday changes every half hour, what I need to be doing. So I'm keeping that. That has helped me a lot. It's kept me sane at work.
I
Yeah.
love it. That is such powerful learning. Thank you for sharing that, Christine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I should have advanced to this slide previously. My apologies. We did share out, and I do want to share the what, why, and how of resilience. And Bev, Christine was in our last session, as I mentioned. So Christine, this is not new information for you. But if you're like me, the second time I read something, or the third time, or the fourth time, I learned something new. So I hope that's your experience right now as well. A lot of the inspiration for this workshop, again, is taken from Elena Aguilar, and she shares this about the what, why, and how of resilience. In terms of the what, she says resilience is a way of being that allows us to bounce back quickly from adversity and stronger than before so we can fulfill our purpose in life. And I love how she's not saying adversity doesn't exist, right? It is a reality of the human experience. But she's saying that, that resilience can help us navigate adversity. In terms of the why of resilience, Elena Aguilar writes, toxic stress first manifests as decreased productivity and escalates to more serious symptoms such as anxiety, disassociation, frustration, and eventually burnout. And I think working in the field of education, we have maybe seen this in colleagues and or experienced it ourselves. So this work is, of course, especially pertinent right now. And Bev, you mentioned that at the beginning of this workshop, how much work you are doing with educators around this. In terms of the how of resilience, Aguilar writes, resilience can be cultivated through engaging in specific habits and by fostering specific dispositions, which is, of course, what we're going to do in this workshop together. Aguilar goes on to write this about the way that celebrating and appreciating, which is what we're focused on in this workshop today, actually are practices and behaviors that build our resilience. So she writes, individual and collective celebration, as well as the practice of gratitude, is the capstone to the habits in this book. Even during hard moments, if we can shift into a stance of appreciation, we'll build our resilience. Appreciation cultivates our trust in ourselves, in a process, and perhaps in something greater, which helps us respond to the inevitable challenges of life. So I want to frame our first activity around celebrating and appreciating with this quote from Anais Nin. She writes, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom. So clearly this is a quote about change and about transformation when that is clearly the only path forward for us. I want to give you two options to engage in this thinking. I'll just read both options. They're both in your workbook on page 2. If you want to, why don't I give you a minute to actually turn to page 2, and then I will go over the directions. And Christine, it looks like you printed that off. That's awesome. So option 1 is to think about the ways that you have lived tight in a bud. How maybe you've held back from being your full, expansive, and authentic self. And then digging deeper, what holds you back from being who you are and offering what you have to offer? Who in your life would appreciate it if you would blossom into your authentic, expansive self? full self, excuse me, and what words of appreciation might they say? So that is one option to engage in this thinking. And then the second option that you could choose is a destination postcard. What would it look like and sound like if you blossomed from the tight bud? You can draw a picture of yourself and use thought bubbles and labels to depict yourself as your authentic, expansive, and full self. Do either of you have any questions about this exercise before we take some time to do this thinking and writing or drawing?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, I will cut you loose for a few minutes and then we'll come back together and do some sharing. We have just a minute left to finish our thinking and writing or drawing. So coming back together, I want to reassure you that this strategy is here for you. You'll receive the workshop recording and you have the workshop materials. So if you didn't have a chance to complete this thinking, you can always come back to it. I want to move us into one more strategy, and then we're going to do some sharing about our experience with these two strategies. So I'm going to read a poem to you, and this is really a poem about appreciating the simple things in our life that we might overlook, like our whiteboard or our elbows or our socks or a thermostat that we can click on to make our house warm. Things that really bring us a lot of comfort, but that we might not just see because we're so accustomed to them. So I'm going to click on this link and take you to this poem. And although a donation is deserved, I am not going to donate right now, but I am going to read you Ode to My Socks by Pablo Neruda. And I want to read this to you to give you some inspiration because I'm going to ask you to write your own poem or your own ode to some simple joys in your life. Ode to My Socks by Pablo Neruda. Maru Mori brought me a pair of socks, which she knitted herself with her sheepherder's hands. 2 socks as soft as rabbits. I slipped my feet into them as though into 2 cases knitted with threads of twilight and goatskin. Violent socks, my feet were 2 fish made of wool. 2 long sharks, sea blue, shot through by 1 golden thread. 2 immense blackbirds, 2 cannons. My feet were honored in this way by these heavenly socks. They were so handsome for the first time, my feet seemed to me unacceptable, like 2 decrepit firemen, firemen unworthy of the woven fire of those glowing socks. Nevertheless, I resisted the sharp temptation to save them somewhere as schoolboys keep fireflies, as learned men collect sacred texts. I resisted the mad impulse to put them into a golden cage and each day give them birdseed and pieces of pink melon. Like explorers in the jungle who hand over the very rare green deer to the spit and eat it with remorse, I stretched out my feet and pulled on the magnificent socks and then my shoes. The moral of my ode is this: beauty is twice beauty, and what is good is doubly good when it is a matter of 2 socks made of wool in winter. So coming back to, I am in full screen. Coming back to this strategy, I want to give you a couple of options that you will see on page 3 of your workbook. You can write an ode to an ordinary thing in the style of Pablo Neruda, or you can write a list poem about the many things for which you are grateful that are just simple things in your life or in your environment. If you need some additional inspiration, you could always just look around your house. And we'll just take a couple of minutes to do this writing. have just another minute to wrap up our thinking and writing, our poem. All right. I am excited to hear your creations. So, in this sharing, if you can just share what you wrote or drew, and then you can also share how the experience felt for you, and how you might use it in the future. Any of those questions that are especially resonant with you. Um, Bev, I appreciated you sharing that you never know with Zoom who's sharing first, and I feel the same way. So maybe is it Christine? Can I just ask you to share first, and then Bev, you can share second? Does that work for both of you?
Oh, thank you so much. That really does help.
Great.
Okay. So I did the list because it's less stressful for me. So I wrote family, pets, home, cars, job, workshops, camp, friends, Doctor Who, my tribe, water, love, my commute, my pen, my blanket, the sun, and grocery stores. So those are things that I am thankful for because they make my life joyful and convenient and happy.
That is truly an ode. I just felt each one of those as you were reading them. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel uplifted by your words. When you talked about sun and water, I was like, oh, why do I never stop to think about what these things mean? Like, I just drank a glass of water. Did I stop to think, like, wow, thank goodness I have this? Oh, I love it. Thank you, Christine.
Yes.
And anything else that you want to share about, or maybe, well, let's hear from Bev first, and then maybe we could go back to see if there's anything else you want to share about your destination postcard or your response from that first exercise we did, if that's okay. Bev, do you want to share your ode to the simple things in life with us in whatever form it took?
Sure. So the options you gave us in the ode tied together. And here's just a super speedy backstory. I chose this workshop because I've been teaching my students resilience. I've been teaching my children at home resilience. And I've learned, and a super important part of resilience is self-care. And that is where I have been lacking in the balance for my own self. Okay. So, okay, here we go. It's an ode to my children. Their laughter, their questions, their dance moves to songs, their singing, their whistling, even their fighting. What great joy they bring me. What great joy I miss in the work heavy sea. Dance with them, laugh with them, sing and whistle together, creatively empower them without stress so we can paint our lives together to look like a united, beautiful, but loving mess.
Oh, that's so great. A united, beautiful, but loving mess. I feel like you're just giving permission to all of us for life to be what it is, which is those things, right? Oh, thank you for sharing. Um, do either of you want to share how this experience felt for you or how you might use it in the future? Bev, you did mention that. You mentioned that you might use this with your children and students.
For me, this is a catalyst, right? I'm at that fork in the road, where I know what I need to do. I just need to do it kind of thing, and like in option one, I put, the thing that keeps me from being fully who I am, is my lack of balance for caring for myself. And I know, like in my brain and my heart, it is not selfish. You can't give to anyone else if you're empty, right? I teach this, but when I do have that balance, these are the things I hear from my kids. You're not so stressed. You laugh more. You're more fun. And those are like in their innocence, more fun, not ha ha, we don't have consequences. So for me, like I'm at that fork in the road. So I need to make sure I'm taking that time for myself. And what that looks like for me is working out. That's my biggest stress reliever. So taking that time so I can get back to this. You laugh more, Mom. You're not so stressed.
I love that. And I also love that you know about yourself what your stress reliever is. That exercise brings you that release. That's such powerful information for you to have about yourself. Thank you for sharing. Christine, anything you want to share about that first exercise we did? Whether you did, it looked like maybe you were drawing a destination postcard. Did you do the destination postcard, or was I misinterpreting and you were writing?
I was writing.
You were writing.
Yeah, I drew earlier, so I figured I'd write and expand on myself. So I wrote, I read the questions, and then I was like trying to put it down as I understood them, but I'm never sure if I understand them correctly. But then I always remember that if I'm understanding something, then I guess that's better than nothing. So I wrote, I keep to myself. I don't share a lot with colleagues. I have a fear of rejection, and I feel that if I share, then I show my vulnerable self. I have been working on this part of me and have a small tribe of women who have agreed to let me practice with them. They do tell me that it helps them to open up to more perspectives, and we all express our gratitudes for each other via text and email. So that's how I wrote that.
That is beautiful, Christine, and I appreciate your openness and willingness to be vulnerable and sharing that. I think that is a move that demonstrates the impact of your work in that area. And I just want to affirm that I think what you feel there in terms of like fear of being rejected or maybe being judged, although that's my word, not yours, so that may not be exactly accurate, but that's so human. And I just want you to know how I think we all experience that. So thank you for sharing, because I think when we hear someone else vocalize or verbalize that, then we're like, oh, it's okay. That's just part of a human journey. So thank you.
Mhm. You're welcome.
Wonderful to hear how you both are making sense of this work. And yeah, there's no right or wrong way to do these strategies. They're just for you to use in the way that feels most meaningful. So we're going to move into looking at gratitude. And Eddie Hillesum says this: a desire to kneel down sometimes pulses through my body, or rather, it is as if my body has been meant and made for the act of kneeling. Sometimes, in moments of deep gratitude, kneeling down becomes an overwhelming urge. Head deeply bowed, hands before my face. So, in regards to deep gratitude, I have some questions for you. And I want to just orient you to your workshop materials. If you have space and you want to capture any of them below your gratitude poem, you can do so, or you are welcome to just capture them on a piece of paper. What makes you feel the kind of deep gratitude that Eddie Hillesum describes? Describe a time when you felt this kind of gratitude. Where were you? Who were you with? What happened? How did you feel? What did you do to express your gratitude? How does it feel to remember that moment? So we'll just take a little time to do this thinking and writing. And I should say, don't feel obligated to write in response to all of these questions. You can just, again, choose those that feel most important or purposeful to you right now. Let's just take a minute to wrap up our thinking and writing, and then we'll share out. So, coming back together, I am excited to hear what you both thought of and wrote in response to any of these questions. And just to go back and forth, Bev, if you want to start us off, we welcome that.
Sure. I would say probably a time that really came to mind for some deep gratitude was just watching. It's not like one specific instance really, but it's watching the support around my kids and I that has happened since COVID. And it's interesting because where I feel like I've brought some balance to my home, even though obviously I'm still working on it, I've seen our community support grow also. And that gives me extremely deep gratitude, because it really brings to mind that, you know, parents raise their kids, of course, but a village really empowers children in a way that two parents can't possibly do it by themselves. So for that, I feel extremely deep gratitude.
Oh, I hear that, Bev. There's so much humility, isn't there, in just seeing a community of people love your children and offer you support. I find it so humbling and heartening and beautiful. I really hear that. Thank you for sharing. Christine, how about you?
Okay, so what I remembered was um, the time where I felt great gratitude. I took a gratitude workshop a couple of years ago. It was at my camp that I go to every year. It's a self-care camp for women that um, I didn't get to go to this last year. Um, so because we didn't have it. But I was at camp with my tribe of women. A lot of people are returnees, they go back, and then we have new women that we bring in. We expressed, we were doing a gratitude workshop. We expressed gratitude to our ancestors and their choices, the good ones and the bad choices, because those choices were things that brought us to being. So we wrote them all on a big poster board, wrote down the good and bad choices that our ancestors or our parents had made throughout their lives that we felt affected us in some way. And then after we wrote them all down, we painted our current family on top of it. Because those things that they did were the foundations of who our family is right now. And it brought a lot of peace. It brought a lot of things for a lot of people that were in that group. Gratitude was what we were, aiming for. So I felt great gratitude for all the choices that my young parents had made for my family to be who they are and what we are today.
What a holistic way of seeing the decisions, as you say, of your ancestors and parents, to look for the good in all of that. That's a very brave thing to do, and it sounds like it was really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like an incredible camp and community that you are a member of too.
Yeah.
It's very, do you both feel, I feel so uplifted hearing your stories. Do you feel that?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's very heartening. Thank you. I want to invite you into some additional strategies around celebration and appreciation. And just to orient you, I am going to hop into your workshop material. So you will see these on page 4. And you can see that there are a variety of activities here, and they're not necessarily things that we have the time to do together right now, but this is a place for you to do some planning and thinking around one of these activities or more that you really like in the next week. And you do not have to like all of these. I mean, this is there's a variety here so that there's hopefully something for everyone. So you can see there that there's a place to read a bit about each of these strategies. And then there's a place for you to do some planning and reflection. So the first strategy there is everyone I'm grateful for. And that is really, that's something you've actually kind of started to do in this workshop, but thinking about people in your world or your ancestors for whom you are grateful. And then as a bonus, you can reach out to them and share that with them, share that gratitude with them. So these could be students or family members, community members, etc. And I love, Christine, that you brought in the idea of thinking about gratitude for ancestors too. And I would include that here too. A flurry of appreciation. So this is just setting a goal to share a certain number of appreciations for those with whom you work. You can leave notes, you can send emails or text messages, or do it in person, or even doing it anonymously is fun. And then there's a place to reflect on how you feel after doing that, if that's what you choose. My life is very blessed is an activity that James Baraz writes about in his book, Awakening. And in this, if you find in this exercise, it's basically like a mantra. So if you find yourself worrying or complaining, which is of course human and normal and okay, but it's so powerful to bring awareness to it. And it's interesting the way that your thinking and feeling around that can be shifted if you then bring your attention to ways that you feel very blessed in your life. And then the gratitude letter is selecting a person you feel grateful for and writing a letter appreciating the ways that that person has impacted your life, and sending that letter and then reflecting on how that feels. And then the awe walk is, I love this one. It's kind of a meditation. So it's taking a walk somewhere that is a place you feel connected to or inspired by. And, for me, that's the natural world, but for you, it might be an urban setting, whatever place you feel inspired by. And just try to see that place for the first time with sort of the beginner's mindset or fresh eyes, and pay attention to colors and sounds, and imagine that you are showing them to a visitor or child, and then reflect on that experience. So let's just take a minute to plan for which of those exercises you might want to try this week. And you can see there's a place in the note catcher to record the challenge you chose, why you were drawn to that challenge, how you'll set yourself up for success. So you might even put that challenge in your calendar right now. And then you can see there's a place to reflect after you engage in that exercise. Any questions before we take a little time to do this thinking and writing? Okay. We will take about 5 minutes for this. We have just another minute to do this planning and then we'll share out. So, coming back together, Christine, I wonder if you would be willing to share first, and you can share any your answers to any of these questions. You can share what you wrote, the challenge that you chose, how the experience of doing this thinking and writing felt for you, and how you might use it in the future.
Okay. The challenge that I chose is an awe walk. And why I was drawn to this challenge is it links up with the last session. We did goals. So I had a goal of walking my dog with my husband because it took care of one, my fat puppy needs walked, and and two, spending time with my husband since we don't get much time with each other. So this challenge would also link into that. We're knocking 3 things out at once. I like doing that. How will you set yourself up for success? I have marked the times and dates in both my and my husband's calendars. So our phones will actually tell us it's time for your walk in 15 minutes. So I have that set up. What did I learn from the experience? I haven't had the experience yet, but the experience of getting this all written down and organized makes me feel really peaceful because I have a goal and a plan, and the implementation should be pretty smooth. And I like when plans go smooth.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Anything else you want to share?
how I might use it in the future, we'll probably just keep it on our calendars for a recurring event every week or every other day is how we have it set up. So there we go.
I love it. And I love knowing that this is already in your calendar and it's going to happen. You've already made the decision for how to use that time in the future. And I also want to say, Christine, that I really appreciate you being here today, knowing that you have limited time with your husband and that you're choosing to spend some of it on your weekend learning with us and creating this community together. So thank you for that. And Bev, would you be willing to share with us your answers to any of these questions? And feel free, I feel like I wish we could be all in a room together so that we could just have a kind of round robin conversation, but feel free to just ask follow-up questions to each other or, reach out to each other too.
Christine, we are definitely on the same page with this, let me tell you. So I like all of these ideas. The walk is definitely one that I am putting on my calendar as well. And for me, it's I think it's so easy to forget all the blessings for every week and things to be grateful for. So For me, I plan on starting with every other Friday. Ideally, every Friday would be great, but I get myself in trouble when I overschedule. So, every other Friday, take my German Shepherd on a walk because I have a beautiful trail here in the Magic Valley on the Canyon Rim, and just really digest the good of the week. And um, okay, this is probably going to sound really dumb, but I don't know how to word it. So it's like feeling the positivity, right? Like not just being quick to think about it and let it go, but really kind of embracing it more than I've allowed myself to in quite some time. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It does. I mean, it makes me think, Bev, about kind of just really bringing your attention, almost a meditation on the beauty that you can find in your week, or the connection, or whatever you're celebrating from your week, is how it sounds to me.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. You gave me words for it that I needed.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. Anything else that you want to share, Christine? Any follow-up thoughts?
I live like a block away from CSI, so that's where I take our walks.
Oh, nice.
I love it. Oh, thank you both so much for sharing that. I love that we all three, the Awak was mine too. I just that is the one that feels um just really life-giving, to be out in nature and just set aside the time to be reflective and feel gratitude. And one thing that comes to mind with this too, that I want to be sensitive to, is I've been listening to some podcasts. There's a Brene Brown. I don't know if you to read or listen to Brene Brown's work, but she did this interview with Dr. Susan David where they talk about toxic positivity and that kind of pressure, particularly on women, to always be seeing the positive and feeling grateful. And I don't intend for any of this to come across that way. I think that there's room for both, right? To acknowledge the hard things and process those emotions. And you both mentioned strategies that you use to process the hard things. So this isn't ignoring those, but it's setting aside the time as well, as you both just planned for, to celebrate what is bubbling to the top for you in your life. So I did just want to clarify that. We have just a little bit of time to do some transfer and reflection. And Christine, you will recognize these questions from our last workshop as well. So the questions for reflection and transfer are: what did you learn about yourself today? How did this workshop help you cultivate resilience? What do you hope for your journey moving forward? Where will you put your attention? What will you try this week? How might you integrate some of these strategies into your classroom to help students build resilience? And I would expand that to say into your community, to help your community build resilience, or your family, as you mentioned. So this is on page, I'm sorry, I didn't include the page number there. This is on page 5. Oh, thanks, Christine, of your workshop materials, where you can do that reflecting. We'll just take a few minutes to do that. Just have a minute left to wrap up our thinking and writing. All right. I am going to just see if either of you want to share out anything that you are excited to carry forward in terms of this workshop and any of the strategies.
You know, you gave me some really cool things to think about and some tools that I can use with my students. So you've definitely added to my resilience toolbox, both professionally and personally. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bev. That was my goal for sure. So I'm so happy to hear that some of these strategies felt useful moving forward.
And ditto. So I feel exactly the same. I wrote that my dedication to my self-care has not wavered during this pandemic. So I've realized that through this workshop, or these two workshops really. The workshop has inspired my gratitude work to increase. I feel that if something is presented to me, then it requires some sort of attention. So like I always feel like if somebody has brought up gratitude to me more than one time, then something needs to click in my brain that I need to be working on that some more. So I will be checking out some of these exercises, these tools, and sharing them with our school counselor for our staff meetings, because we have once a month, our school counselor comes in for our staff meetings on Fridays and does self-care stuff for our teachers. And she's always looking for new material to help share with the staff. And so I think this would be a good one for all of us to experience together as a group. So I will be sharing that with her.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing how you'll be bringing this work to your community as well, Christine. I hope that it resonates with your colleagues and community. I did just want to share that the materials in this workshop come from this book Onward by Elena Aguilar, and I mentioned her name several times, and Christine, I mentioned this workbook and central text in our last workshop together. So her work is really focused on providing strategies for educators around building resilience, and the workbook is just full of exercises. And so if either of you are interested in checking it out, it really is, it's kind of like a journal that is divided up in terms of each month having a different resilience strategy. And then Elena Aguilar also has a consulting firm around coaching and providing professional development for educators called Bright Morning. And they provide free professional development in some instances with webinars, and then you can take some of their classes. And they really do a beautiful job of building a super supportive, inclusive community. So I highly recommend their professional development. And I just wanted to leave you with this poem by Diane Ackerman. Living things tend to change unrecognizably as they grow. Who would deduce the dragonfly from the larva, the iris from the bud, the lawyer from the infant? Flora or fauna? We are all shapeshifters and magical reinventors. Life is really a plural noun, a caravan of selves. And with that inspiration, I will say goodbye. And I do just want to express my gratitude to both of you for being here. It was really fun to have this small group, and I feel connected to both of you. So thank you for joining for this.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Absolutely. And I hope you really enjoy the rest of the conference. As you know, we have a break now. So enjoy some lunch and maybe a walk or any